Welcome. This is the March 4th Jail and Zones production user call. We have Zakir, Jan, Richard, Dan, Tomek, Dave, and myself, Michael. And I am curious for those who have been attending the OSI calls hosted by, it was Doug, have those effectively replaced these calls and we can shift to other topics like dtrace, or no, there's still value in having a Jail and Zones dedicated call?
I would say it's the other way around. The OCI talks are, the OCI calls have been more or less rounding up now that the FreeBSD extension to the OCI runtime specification is handed into the OCI review process or whatever. But they still happen, and the next one should be next Monday.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. I called Jamie out of the blue, the jail maintainer on FreeBSD. He's here in Oregon, and he's rather busy, especially this time of year. However, he is definitely following the PR. So if you want to reach him with a technical topic, just follow the process, and that's probably best for all around. It's documented, it's public, it's occasionally effective. So for those following me on the Fediverse, I've been babbling about various fundraising. You may recall BSD fund from 2007, wiped out by the 2008 financial crisis. But hey, let's not hope there aren't any predictions going on right now. But as per these calls, we have discussed wish list features. And I am a believer that we should actually compensate developers for the time it takes to research a project, because sometimes that means that, I'll put in the chat, but this is not yet for the public. If you happen to see the URL in the video, great. But we should compensate developers for the time it takes to research a project, because sometimes that does 90% of the work, or it determines that it can't be done, and potentially they wasted a whole bunch of time. So I am hoping to find a budget for, say, let's think in terms of USD for the moment, but hey, Canadian dollars or euros apply between $100 and $1,000 batches, probably around 250 on average, to just say, hey, we've discussed this at length. The users want this. Often developers have already been reached out to, and let's just get something formal, because, well, the FreeBSD Foundation made some positive signals last week about saying, hey, bring your formal proposals to us. So I'm glad that you have some news, Jan, on libzfs core, but none of these should be a surprise based on recent discussions, and some of them are very long-term discussions. So any questions, ideas, suggestions, thoughts, concerns regarding that whole notion?
I can just give all of you a short status update, and that is that, yes, the kind of data set management I envision for my jails is possible with just libzfs core, but you can't log it to the zpool history. So it would be just like with BECTL, where you modify the pool and only the low-level history of the actual commands and not the high-level, as in user space command history, which would be very confusing. So I kind of have to use the full libzfs, not just libzfs core for my jail automation.
Is there
And
no
so,
logging to the zpool history with libzfs core?
yes and no. You would have to define the ZFS underscore CMD struct, and that's like one of the most low-level structs available, and or unavailable in my case, to directly create the right struct to hand to the ioctl from user space, and to append to the high-level history log. So, but the full libzfs, instead of just libzfs core, has an API for that, which is implemented exactly like that, but there this level of low-level struct filling, initialization, partial initialization, and so on belongs, but it doesn't belong really in some shim, so you link against one library less. So I looked around and I found a workaround to build against the full libzfs without having all of the headers pollute my C code. Yeah,
Okay.
it's about the same as before. Find the right subset of headers you really need, copy them around, and so it's surprisingly few headers you really need to build against libzfs correctly, and it works. It helps that the API is basically primitive types or opaque struct pointers, so you don't need to know the internal build, units of any of the structs because you're only dynamically allocating them and then accessing all the functions through pointers, which is fine.
Okay. Could you show that in code on tomorrow's ZFS call?
I hope so.
Cool. Thank you. I look forward to that. Any questions for Jan? That was a smooth segue from my topic. Zakir, how did you find out about these calls, and what do you want to tell us about yourself? And all I know is you're interested in kernel development. Did we lose Zakir? We lost Zakir. Oh, but he's back. Ha. Let's give him a sec to reconnect. Zakir, if you can hear me, I see you dropped off for a moment. I just asked how you found out about these calls and what about kernel development interests you. And you're muted, but maybe you're also busy with putting out a fire. No need to apologize. Is this a good time or should we move on? We can catch up later. Alrighty, let's move on. Dave, it sounds like you're punching in your remarkable successes on
I am.
mail. If you want to wrap that up, fine, or I can do some of the dictation as you lay it on.
It's fine. I'll tap it in as I go.
Cool.
So the background is many years ago, I ran my own mail server and I could just send to it any garbage I wanted and it would figure it out what needed to be done and it would send it off to the appropriate place, eventually by SMTP. And the last couple of months, I've finally switched over to using DMA everywhere. I used it for a long time in my home infrastructure, which is only about three servers. And Fastmail would happily accept DMA mail and deliver it to the right mailbox without any issue. But when I added another, 20 odd plus production systems, they got grumpy and said there was a limit of, a few thousand a month, and there was certainly time limited in how many I could send. So I had to look for another solution. And at first it seemed pretty straightforward. You just update mail from and mail to in cron tab, and then cron would be sorted. And because periodic has started from cron, that would inherit those. But it didn't. And it really took me most of a month in duration to finally get them all done. And in particular, Dan is the other person I think who would recall this sort of stuff. I needed to add all of these things to Etsy periodic to get it to go in the end. And even that wasn't enough. So this is it going to let me paste stuff? Paste without formatting. I don't know why Google doesn't want to let me paste stuff. Let's try it again. There we go. So this is obviously Etsy periodic. And the first one is one I added, but the next three, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, we all know those. But there's also daily status, security, weekly, monthly as well. And I'm kind of puzzled that those need to be manually specified and aren't sort of magically inherited from the other ones, but they aren't. That was version 2. And the version 3 one was almost perfect. What I see is I check on my servers and go, is there anything in VastPool DMA that's backed up? And if there is, there's a problem. And what I found is that there are a number of ports that install their own cron tabs. So cron lives in 3 places. We've got Etsy cron tab, And finally, all the crons.
Oh.
So they all do the same thing as version 1, but we've got etc cron tab. We've got etc/cron/d, and of course we've got user local etc cron.d as well. And the last one was the final one that caught me. There may be other places that cron tabs lives in the system. I honestly don't know. But once all of that was done, then your normal DMA stuff was happy. And now I pay a paltry, I think like about sort of 30, 40 cents a month for all of those emails. Yeah, so it's worthy a DVL style blog. I'll get to it at some point because it's not difficult. It's just annoyingly fiddly. And every time you look at this, you see stuff backed up and vastful DMA. And the worst part of the problem is when you get it wrong, what happens is DMA sends you an email to tell you that it couldn't send email, and the problem just sort of compounds. Not in a catastrophic exposing way, but not great.
Dan, you have a comment in chat? Any
Yeah,
elaborate on?
I do similar. All my say I have a host on the internet. All of the jails in that host use DMA. They all forward to the host itself, which is running postfix. The host then relays those emails onto fastmail. I think using the submit port, so 587.
Yeah, 587.
So it's just me submitting regular mail. It just happens to be going to myself anyway. When things are broken at home, a similar approach is used. There's a single host name answered by 2 jails within the basement, one on each of the 2 physical hosts. They're running postfix. Everything else is running DMA, and they also relay on to fastmail. And I think I'm doing maybe 500 or 600 messages a day. But I also use fastmail for my primary email domains, like about 20 or 30 other domains.
Me too. Maybe not quite so many domains, but I definitely have a few there. Yeah, I hit some rate limit, and I'm not really sure now what it is. But var cron tabs is new to me. I thought this was generated.
That's where a cron tab goes if you do cron tab -e.
That's right. Yeah.
Individual cron tabs.
That shouldn't be a long term. That should just be exactly ephemeral files.
Should be what?
Those should be ephemeral files, not your long-term configuration.
Ephemeral files, yeah.
Yeah. So you have the user one, exactly. You have the wait, not those. The others go into /temp. Yeah. Okay, that's correct. Yeah. Sorry for the confusion. No, delete that. That's misinformation. Sorry for that. I got confused.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting. Here's the thing: sending mail from a Unix system, which I've been doing since last century. How hard could it be? Obviously, I know this really well, and it turns out, no, I don't. So I don't know if anyone else had to add all of this monthly, daily, weekly security status as well, but I definitely needed to. And I think I'm not quite sure why DMA handles this differently. I don't know.
Well, you saw my DMA configuration, right?
I'm sure I've read yours.
Big one up.
Does anyone know
I
if
think you
cron
posted to me in Git in your Ansible stuff. Yeah, I still got that here. Yeah,
it's just 3 lines.
Your DMA one, it's probably the same as mine.
Name of the host, smart transfer, secure transfer, start DLS.
Yeah, the DMA stuff itself, that config is super small. It's the surrounding bits to get them to actually send the mail to the right place.
You mean within SendMail? Like, I always make sure that DMA is not talking to postfix. I always make postfix. I make sure DMA is not talking to fastmail. I always let my postfix installation talk to
Yeah. My goal for this was to separate out any infrastructure that I own from sending these emails out, so that I don't have that problem where I break my email and don't know because I'm not getting any email from it. Yeah, this is fine. I'm pretty happy with this. I don't need postfix. I don't need anything else for sending email, and my application stuff I do it directly via SMTP on whatever it is, 587, I guess. Yeah.
So who's the new supplier you're using?
It's Scaleway, but that's just random. The first one I picked that was EU based. Part of the goal is to have everything EU based over time. Apart from probably email, I'll leave my email a fast mail, but all the other stuff.
And so I checked my postfix relay, and it's relay host smtfastmail.com submission.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do like pushover a lot. Yeah, I use it for stuff at home, not as much as I should, but I do use it.
Dan, is it okay to post the fast mail bit?
Well, I be the same as mine. Mine's a little longer. What have I got in mine?
You're asking me, yeah, that's okay. That's an internal host, so no one will see that anyway.
Yeah, the only thing I have different in my fastmail in my DMA stuff is I set the host name of the host it's coming from, and I use a thing called Masquerade to make sure that the email addresses line up, and that's because I'm not going through like a smart mailer like Postfix or something like that.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense, but I don't know enough about that side of it to help you.
No, it's fine. It all works now. That bit worked for ages. It's no different to what I had in prior. Oh, you're going to align that, Michael. Thank you. Anyway, that's it from me. It works finally. That took me a month.
Wow.
Excellent. And a perfect follow-on to a previous discussion on mail hosting. Oh, on that topic, you may recall a few weeks back, we dedicated some time to a tour of a mail system that Antroneg's been doing. But there were a few complaints that, that's great, but DNS plays such an important role that it would be nice to have a really nice crash course on the critical DNS entries before a single mail server component is installed. So is there anyone present who might be able to, at some point now or later, chime in on the DNS requirements to not have a non-starter deployment?
Well, I can do that at some point because I've got them all, but it's what DKIM, SPF, and the standard MX records, and I think there's a couple of TXT ones as well.
That kind of exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of tutorials just kind of take that for granted, sweep it under the rug, and say, "Oh, everyone knows that." And no, many of us may not know that. Thank you. I'll put
DMARC is the only one I don't really understand. I'm pretty sure I copied everything off Fastmail's website for that.
That's good to know. There's a tip right there. Note Fastmail advice. If you have a link, that would be even better.
A link is coming up.
Awesome, you rock. Okay, note Fastmail's advice. Dave may have. I can work with that. Thank you. I just put it somewhere. I'll move it. Yep, I'll put it in place. Thank you. Awesome. May have more. There's that. I will put it in context. Cool. Appreciated. Brilliantly on topic. And you're jailing that, so we can write this off. As an expense. Not that I have anything to write off. Zakir, are you settled once again, and would you like to do an introduction of yourself and your interests in kernel development?
I like not much to contribute, but since it's like my first time, but the thing is like I've like dug like not so deep, like less into like jails, because like I'm coming from a Linux background, so it's I've used like I've done development on I think, wait, I forgot the name. It's like VM specific distro, but
Like Rancher or
like
Alpine or something?
no, it's not Alpine. Like it's like I forgot the name. It starts from P. It's
With a P.
um like
No
so
worries. No worries.
We're not talking
okay.
about Podman. We're talking about distro, are we?
Mm.
Like yep. The thing is like but I'm like more familiar with like PST based systems, but I found like one functionality, like it was not compatible with the the jails instance that I used to host. So like I've like I think I'll like make a list of stuff. Then I might like share it like later on. Like I'm
Okay.
not.
How did you find out
So
about the
I
calls?
could be like more construct.
No worries. How did you find out about the calls?
I found out on like Discord, like one of my friends on development, who's like involved in this, said like I might like have some productive like feedbacks on here.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you made it. And chime
Yeah,
in
thank you.
whenever you feel is appropriate. Yeah, no pressure. I try to keep these low stress. That said, any other topics, ideas, questions, funny jokes, world concerns? No, skip that part. Not pressuring, just kind of doing housekeeping here. 1820X UTC. And I just saw a complaint that there's a time change coming up. So I will try to navigate that well. That doesn't always go smoothly. And suddenly maybe someone doesn't update the Discord link announcement, and suddenly people arrive an hour like early or late. Da, 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 da. Thank you. Time changes. Let's see. Anything else? What you got? Questions, ideas? 11th. Actually, let's take a quick look at that fast mail advice and see if we collectively have questions, especially what is DMARC, which you were thinking is a more confused. Uh-oh. Not available in this country? Not found. Fastmail blog. Check that URL, I suppose.
Really?
And Richard, well, I at the risk of reminding people, everything's pretty open here. So if you comment, I assume it's for consumption and formatting. Oh, some comments on DMARC. Awesome. And I suppose, Dave, we're racing to find the fast mail advice link. Let's see.
All right. Let me try and fix my URL here.
Tips. I see their manual. There's a candidate for you, and let's see. Dave, I found two candidates. Maybe check if those are them. Somewhat straightforward articles from Fast Mail.
I,
At least we know. I muted Dave. I see lips moving, but
Is that better?
that's better. Hey,
Yeah.
hello.
Okay. Yeah. So having dealt with mail now for probably like 25 plus years, the large providers aren't really interested in addressing spam, and that's what's really frustrating is an
Interesting.
enormous portion of it comes through the many possible interfaces that have for ways to submit email, notifications, back emailing from services that are inside Microsoft or Google, and it's really difficult to defend against the incoming spam. But the outbound stuff, in theory, should be straightforward with DMARC, DKIM, and that should be enough for any email provider to go, this email isn't actually coming from the people. This email isn't actually coming from the people who are allowed to deliver mail from that area. But another large component that's not listed in any of these guides is every IP address is rated as spammy or not. So if you're like me and you've been using a hosted service, a physical server with your own static IP, in my case, Equinix, for years and years, it's got a really good no spam rating because it hasn't sent spam in, I don't know, a decade or whatever. And it's very frustrating then to turn around, have Equinix shut their services down and know that I'm going to have to pick up some random IP from somewhere else on the internet, and that rating will need to start from scratch. So yeah, all good for DKIM, DMARC, etc. SPF records, they all help. But the number one, I think, influence is your IP considered legit?
Interesting.
Yeah, I've had an interesting discussion with someone from Microsoft Office 365 about that when they decided that they no longer want to provide valid reverse DNS. And the reason apparently was, yeah, paying customers complained about mail reachability when their outbound messages are traced back to their domain. As in, we like spammers' money. Because they sign up for a subscription and then just burn through it all, and we get to keep the prepaid amount. But that's just me filling out blanks.
In terms of motivation, there's no incentive for providers of email to reduce spam. It's not their problem. That's a reader problem. And there is a very big incentive for them to deliver every mail they get to you, because no one rings up to complain about the amount of spam, but you will ring up if you didn't get that contract or the mail bounced for that critical business thing. So I think the incentives don't line up very well. Yeah.
And just for historical oversight, the real world problem is that the way the protocol has grown, you cannot fix certain things without having a flag day, which is never going to happen. Not at least until we've killed the whole email infrastructure by making it unusable, and everyone has to migrate to something else.
There's a really nice old article from Fastmail, and what's that old? It's like 8-10 years old now.
Wow.
That sort of describes how did we end up in this abysmal state. But it's a good read. It kind of gives the reason for why all of this stuff is the way it is.
Is that the one you just posted, or is that from the previous idea of their nice overview of DNS entries? Yes, that one.
It's just a random blog post.
Okay, I'll format. Don't worry. Cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you did it. Awesome. Let's take a quick look at that. Was it Richard? Did you have some thoughts on DMARC? Or can you paraphrase what you put down below there?
Yeah, hold it. So with us, we run a few thousand student accounts, and what I found quite interesting is, so the more well-known mail service, the guys who actually don't have DMARC, sometimes it's easier for us to catch spam. Normally what happens is it gets put into like a dynamic Word or Google Doc. with a bad link within it, and the user isn't aware of it, it just slips through. Whereas the guys who actually don't have it configured, it's a lot easier to catch it coming in from us because it immediately knocks up their spam rating, which I've just found quite interesting. It's almost like in some ways, if you have a well-configured server, it actually, if it's not being monitored what's getting pushed down the line, it makes it difficult for the end user who doesn't have the high-end filters like the content filters and that from actually blocking it. Because I mean, what I found with that stuff, it's usually within about 15 minutes those links are stale. They just update the link and then the user can click on it a second time and it'll reinfect their machine with a new version of the same file. And it's also just more students and staff that are not that tech savvy as well. Just as a comment with the DMARC.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Anything else at this time? Your call, not mine.
If only someone would write a book about this.
If only.
It's still on my reading list. I haven't read it yet. I'm sorry. Sorry to say.
Yeah, don't let him. Yeah, so if in case you haven't heard of it, do I have one within reach? Michael W. Lucas has a book entitled Run Your Own Mail Server, and you can probably guess what it's about. By definition, it has to be a bit opinionated, but hopefully it meets your needs or at least covers a lot of these topics like DMARC, like SPF, be it whatever. Anything else, or shall we call it good? And perhaps catch up tomorrow on the ZFS call. And congratulations, Flo, for winning an Oscar in an open source produced movie made in Latvia with a team in Belgium and other places. One new message.
Please tell us more.
Pardon?
You mentioned Oscar. Tell me more.
So Sunday, the Academy Awards took place, giving out Oscars to the film industry. And the best animated feature-length film was Flow from Latvia, also known as Straume. And that was quite the win, taking on the larger studios, etc.
Wow, congratulations.
And for all the thank you and all the kind of punk counterculturals, etc. One comment was, wow, that was the only good part of that ceremony. That's cool. That's cool. That said, let me show perhaps a photo on the doc here. Because it's a media topic, and that's very much a ZFS topic. I've been mentioning it over on that call. So there's Kitty with Oscar. Let's see if it will scroll within our lifetime. Oh, Kitty. And here's a few of us welcoming the director in Portland a few weeks ago in a bitter cold.
Cool.
We sang
So was
to him.
FreeBSD used in the production?
I do not believe it was. I sure hope they use ZFS purely for the safety of that data.
Okay.
But that's
Not
family.
pulling a pixel?
What's that, Jan?
Yeah, we don't need them pulling another pixel like with Toy Story 2.
Oh, correct. That's actually a very good point right there. So reportedly, they lost what exactly?
A big as XFS file system on some kind of hardware RAID attached to a bunch of SGI boxes back when those were relevant. And just because someone took a tape with him at home and had most of the assets, they kind of saved the movie.
Oh.
The hardware RAID, big JBoard distributed storage, and it exploded without proper backups.
It wasn't that much distributed then.
It was Toy Story 2.
Yes. I don't have the whole story. So you would have to just Pixar Toy Story 2 data loss is probably
Well,
enough to find the history.
If you find an article, just drop it on the ZFS doc. Otherwise, oh, here we go. You found the next web. Ooh. Thank you for that, Dave. Good work, Dave. I swear I'm trying to insert here. Click. There we go. A few more clicks. Yes.
I might have a short question at the end.
Please.
Regarding jails, I'm not really that much familiar yet,
You've come to the
except
right
some
place.
basic stuff. But does it work on the Raspberry Pi, for example, these small embedded systems?
Absolutely. It's purely in kernel FreeBSD, so it should go anywhere that FreeBSD goes, unless I'm losing my mind.
ZFS works on something like a more modern Raspberry Pi. ZFS really doesn't like a 32-bit address space. It's just that it makes heavy use of a kernel heap in ways normal file systems don't. And especially on 32-bit PCs, the problem is just that you have such a tiny kernel heap that ZFS will eventually encounter a state where the kernel heap is badly fragmented. These days with clustered caches through the I don't remember the name of this indirecting, but it used to be that each cached ZFS block had to be physically continuous. Now it doesn't have to be, but it's still slower when you're fighting kernel heap fragmentation.
I believe he said
So any
jail, but I could be
64-bit
wrong.
system should work
Yeah.
fine, but the jail subsystem itself doesn't need any of that. It just needs FreeBSD, and you can run it off an SD card. But
Yeah,
if you, but then you have to deal with a traditional modify in place file system. And one of the problems with Raspberry Pi is that, especially the older ones, had pretty unreliable SD card controllers because they accidentally undervolted the SD cards, which some SD cards, just can't handle, and they don't fail cleanly. Instead, they slowly corrupt, and then you can grab the next SD card when the real leveling table is corrupted.
Yeah, I bought a whole bunch of them. What I mean right now is the jails, because I got like the Raspberry Pi 0 2W, so it's the 64-bit CPU, and I'm running FreeBSD 14.2 release on that, and I'm going to use it. I'm building the distributed build and run time test farm for the NATX RTOS. So the problem is I can build, fetch the upstream, and that's not a problem. But we'd like to also try the pull requests that are untrusted. So I'm, considering using jails to create a local kind of secure environment. If that, so if there are some malicious, I don't know, scripts included or code, then it would be jailed for the build process. And then, it's going to be like one-time use only jail. It's going to be discarded.
That's fine.
Like
but it's a very write-intensive workload when you put that in a normal file system. In that case, it doesn't matter if it's UFS or ZFS, which is the nemesis of a cheap flash. So how large is a NATX build when it comes to the file system working set? Is there any chance you can fit that into a tmpfs on a Raspberry Pi?
There is only half gigabyte of RAM memory.
Yeah, that's why I asked. Some embedded stuff builds in a few hundred kilobytes.
Well, the final firmware image is a few tens of kilobytes. It can fit to 8 kilo flash, but the source code is it's under 1 gigabyte, so probably it won't fit to the RAMFS.
No, it won't.
Hey, I get one question. I was also testing why I'm doing this, because I compared, the Raspberry Pi takes like 1 or 2 watts of power when idle, and like 5 watts of power when working. And for example, a laptop takes like 10 watts when working. The Mac Studio takes like 55 watts when working, when building. And my desktop PC or kind of Xeon server takes around 300 watts. So the difference is, enormous. It's 20 times slower, but if it's not really time sensitive, if I get something in not 20 seconds, but 400 seconds, it doesn't matter if the maintenance cost and the electricity cost. Maybe I could even, put some wind generator to power it up.
It's a reason why it should be an ARM CPU. Are you trying to run any ARM code natively and exploit that FAM2 is supported on both desktop and microcontrollers, or at least from
It's cross
one
compilation. It's mainly cross compilation. So the build host, and it's called test node. It performs the cross compilation build. Then the firmware is uploaded into physical board. I have like 40 boards. I have 16 ports USB hubs, with self-powered. So then the firmware is flashed on the specific board. It's over 15 different architectures. And then, over the serial port, there is it's like the NATIX was BSD licensed at first. So it's like there is a NATIX shell, and it's standard terminal operations then.
So one of the things you can try is if all the build scripts work on an NFS mount, and then try to use NFS version 4 with file delegations, so that for files which aren't modified by anyone, you can cache those locally. Or something even crazier and FreeBSD specific would be to configure another FreeBSD system, if you have one, to act as a USB device, so that if you have the right kind of cable and USB controller, so that you can actually put a FreeBSD system into USB device mode, then it can emulate a big block storage via CTLD, similar to an iSCSI target. And then you would be able to use a FreeBSD box as kind of your USB attached SAN. But in theory that works, but I never tried it.
Yeah, I'm using like 64 gigabyte SanDisk high endurance, and I have a whole bunch of them in case something gets broken. So the question was about tmpfs. So I was testing with DD, like creating 10 gigabytes image on my home directory, and then mounting like tmpfs. On desktop, I have it, tmpfs mounted on temp, but it seems it's sometimes slower than the hard drive. And I was considering it to be faster, it's working from RAM, so it should be faster, right?
It should be faster than writing to the file system and actually persisting that. So if you run basically write followed by an fsync, it will definitely be slower. But just writing to UFS can be very fast because UFS is pretty deeply integrated with the virtual memory subsystem. So writing to the UFS buffer cache can be quite fast. Because UFS has a very permissive interpretation of POSIX, which means that, you can create a file, like unpack a tarball, do something with the result, and then delete the uncompressed tarball, and nothing gets ever written to disk if you're fast enough, because it will just perform the necessary algebra on the file system metadata to prove that none of that was ever visible basically across a crash, and so it's fine.
Okay, so I have a table with comparison. So for example, on this Raspberry Pi, the SD card read-write is 23 read and 7 for write megabytes per second, and RAM is 6 versus 9. And for
Very
example,
slow.
yeah, for example, on my desktop PC with ZFS in RAID Z2, it's like 2 gigabits read, 1 gigabit write, but on the RAM disk it's 300 megabytes read and 900 megabytes write.
Are you
So
limited
it's
on RAM? Because
Um,
there generally isn't much RAM on a Raspberry Pi, such that if you happen to swap out when you think you're paging,
One of the
it'll
problems,
add
especially
things.
why you should be careful with your mount options for tmpfs, is that if you do, you can essentially run the system out of available memory by just filling up a tmpfs completely. So, and as if you get close, you will put the system under severe memory pressure, which will crash performance, just because everything is running in kind of fallback
yeah, you can limit size,
configurations.
I know. But it was
So
10 gigabytes file and on 32 gigabytes RAM desktop, so that should be safe.
yeah, so tmpfs should be in the multiple gigabytes a second on a desktop.
Yeah,
Uh,
I will have to check that out again.
so let me
Maybe
just
some
check
mount
it on a
settings.
small system.
For instance, only on the HPDL server, like rack server, I have 128 gigabytes of RAM. The write and read was faster. So I had only one single drive, hard drive. It was like 1050 100 megabytes read and 600 write. And RAM disk was 2040 read and 800 write, something around that. So it looks like for some reason the just default options make this ramp tmpfs slower. We're talking about tmpfs, right?
Yes. So I
So only
pasted
on
something
max
from
2.
a AMD Zen 2 system. And if we divide that by 1000 kilo mega giga, so 3.9 gigabytes a second using powers of 10 and not gigabytes. When using gigabytes, it's down to 3.7 gigabytes per second. So yeah, if you use binary gigabytes instead of powers
I need
of
to switch to Zen 5, there is this
so that's Zen 2. So this is a pretty low power system, just a 6-core. Yeah, of course, multi-core systems aren't faster at doing a single system call. So yeah. Yeah, do it now again. Let's see what happens. What are you using as your source? You're not testing with dev random, right?
no, I'm sourcing from dev random, but it's slow, and then there is 10
Yeah,
gigabytes of
reading
random
from
data.
dev random is slow by design.
Yeah, so it's only a file, and I did like did the dd like from the file to dev null, and to test to bin and to tmpfs, and then reading from tmpfs to dev null, something like this.
Let me check that. Copying from tmpfs to dev null. Oh yeah, that's those are the numbers you like to see. So it's copying from the file to dev null is over 10 gigabytes a second, but that's basically mem copy.
Yeah. Okay. I need to upgrade my desktop. I usually do it like once per 10 years, so it's high time.
Cool.
There is
Oh,
the
yeah.
Zen 5 9950X CPU, and it's Zen 5, not Zen 4, like that was this 9950X3D, something like this. So it's more efficient and better power
So
efficient.
I tested that on my old home server, and that's held back by DDR4 2600 something megahertz ECC RAM, because I wanted error correction in my memory and not just high data rates for a file server. So yeah, it would probably be a lot faster when I had, let's say, 3 gigahertz more memory clock, which the CPU could do. The main board, I don't know, but at the time there was just no unregistered ECC memory beyond 3000 or so megahertz available, and that what was available was quite expensive, so I went with slower memory over uncorrected memory.
Maybe some benchmarks of on Wiki would be nice to have.
Especially these generations of AMD CPUs are pretty sensitive when it comes to memory clocks. So slow memory also implies a slow inter-core fabric. So the Infinity fabric is normally tightly coupled to the memory controller frequency. So if you have faster memory, you also have a faster interconnect between your CPUs and between CPUs and the level 3 cache. So you can have even sometimes superlinear speed ups with better memory.
Yeah, I have AMD
Until you hit
FX
crazy
CPU, and yeah, the
memory
machine is totally overclocked already.
clock rates, because at some point the Infinity fabric can't keep up, and then you have to run it at some kind of a divider, normally 1 to 2, or I don't know if they support non-integer dividers these days, but yeah, that's the trade-off then. So if you can get very high memory clocks with DDR5, but sometimes the CPU, what on Intel would be called the uncore, can't keep up, and then you have to clock down in half the clock rate of that part, because it has to run it an integer fraction of the memory clock, and 1 to 1 is oftentimes the best. So basically, don't go beyond what your CPU can run as its maximum Infinity Fabric core on AMD, Infinity Fabric clock on AMD. At least for Zen 2, 3, and 4. I haven't had the chance to play with Zen 5 yet.
There is one CPU I'm gonna buy like in 3 or 4 months maybe. Okay, so
Okay, well, thank
not
you.
to not thank you for your patience, guys.
This week in hardware upgrades, which, well, kind of along for the ride no matter what you're doing. So it's all good. Well, let's call it and perhaps meet later this week with other topics.
Thanks, Jan.
In the, well, who would like the honors? Customary wave. Like and subscribe. Have a great one. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
You too.